Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. I'm your co-host for today, Mike Bailey, along with Ellen DePlacido. Ellen, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Hey, we're going to continue on our merry way with some of these insect problems that you're going to encounter in your vegetable garden. And last few sessions, we've talked about some vegetables that are really quite impacted by insects, and we're going to continue that. And we thought we were going to try to wrap this up today, or this particular session, when we talk about vine crops like the zucchini and the summer squash and the pumpkins and the winter squash, et cetera, and stuff like that. But we're probably not going to be able to cover both the squash bugs and the squash vine borers like we had planned on, because these are, first of all, the plants that we're referring to, the squashes, the zucchini, the summer squash, and those vining crops. A lot of people grow those things, and this
They're
squash,
popular.
yeah, they're popular. And the squash bugs and the squash vine borers are things that really impact these things, and so therefore, I don't want to try to shortchange this whole thing. So what we're going to do, we'll start off with this particular session talking about the squash bugs. And what about those squash bugs, Ellen? Okay, you love this first part, that they overwinter in the debris, right?
I do. And the thing about these is it's the adult squash bug that overwinters in the plant debris and even in some wood piles that you might have around your garden. And then these adults come out in late June or the first part of July, and they start feeding on the leaves and the fruit of some of your plants, because your pumpkins or your squash, well, probably not your pumpkins, but your squash and other vining crops, you might have some fruit on those plants. So the adults um, lay their eggs on the lower surface of the leaves, okay, in clusters of about 20. So there's going to be a lot of eggs on the lower surface of these leaves, usually where the two veins of the leaves meet. Okay, that's probably where you would find this cluster of eggs. And these eggs are elliptical in shape, and they're flat, and they're sort of brownish in color. And those eggs will hatch in about 7 to 9 days. So it's really important that you're out there looking at the lower surfaces of these leaves on these plants um, daily, because these eggs hatch very rapidly. And then, Mike, you're going to tell us what happens once these eggs hatch, right?
Well, even before that, I want to talk about make sure that everybody knows what these things look like. They're
Okay.
only about 5/8 of an inch long, and
Mm-hmm.
they can easily be confused with a stink bug. I think we all know what stink bugs
Okay.
look like,
Yeah, we do.
but the squash bugs are a little bit thinner. Okay, when you look at them from the top, okay, the stink bugs are a little bit rounder. Okay, the squash bugs are a little bit narrower and things like that. So, and those eggs that you talked about, where they lay them on the lower surfaces of the leaves. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and we've taught kids in grade school, okay, how to do this and how to look for this, and but
Yeah.
you're right, they're deposited usually with the junction of a couple of veins in the lower leaves. And one of the things I read, at some time ago, that the female actually can use those veins to brace herself as she deposits those eggs, and hence that's why they end up in that particular position of about the between those veins. And you're right; those eggs will hatch in about 7 to 9 days. And those newly hatched squash bugs kind of look like miniature squash bugs, and even a little bit different. Okay, but they're kind of grayish, and they got longer legs in relationship to the body, and they go through a 5-stage development process, which they call instars. And that whole process from hatching to becoming an adult, they say takes around 33 days. Why 33? Okay, not 34 or 32. I don't know.
Or 30.
You know, and when you're looking at the underside of the leaves, if you've had some eggs that have hatched, what you'll find when you see that first and second instar, or first and second stage of growth, those little bugs stay together. Okay, they're in
Mm-hmm.
groups, okay, and running all over each other, et cetera, and stuff like that. And it's easy to take your hand and just kind of squish the whole group of them, okay, just like you can take care of the eggs that way too. I just kind of scrape the eggs off with my finger, and they drop to the soil, and they're not going to hatch because they need to be on that leaf surface. But it's the same thing with those smaller, squash bugs themselves. You can just take your hand. Again, they're not going to bite. There's nothing poison. They're not going to, not going to harm your hands. Okay, if you want to wear a pair of gloves, that's fine. But once they start getting into that third stage of the development, that third instar, they start to kind of venture out on their own, and that's when it gets a little bit more difficult to control these things. At the egg stage and the first and second instar, they're kind of grouped for you, and you can find them and take care of them easily. And once they get to the adults live for quite a long time. They can live for 75 to 130 days. I was surprised to find that. And the adults, the saliva that they have is really kind of highly toxic, and they inject that saliva into the plants, into the leaves, and into the fruit, and it causes those leaves and that fruit to break down, and in those parts of that plant and that fruit to really kind of die off. So you have to be kind of careful of that. You want to kind of catch these critters, okay, in the early stage of development. But the adults also carry a bacterium. Sounds familiar, okay? The cucumber beetles did that too. But this one isn't as deadly, but it does cause a cucurbit yellow vine disease that can kill plants. It's not as prevalent as that bacterial wilt that's carried by the cucumber beetles, but it is there. Now, when you get to control, adults, like I said, a little bit more difficult to control. You want to target the eggs in the first couple of instars of that nymph stage. Hand remove those eggs and squash those newborn clusters. And if you only have a few plants, that's kind of relatively easy to do. And those bugs have a tendency to drop to the ground at night and hide in the mulch underneath your plants. And what you can do, you can actually put down a board, and those bugs will crawl under that board and cling to that board overnight. You can go out there early in the morning, you can turn that board over, and it can squash a lot of those bugs off, okay, in that particular way. Or you can spray that mulch with some pyrethrin and some carbaryl at the base of the plants. You don't have to put it on the plants. You put it at the base of the plants, and it's not absorbed by the plants. Okay? Put it at the base of the plants, and that'll provide pretty good control. But again, the key is getting used to flipping those leaves over and looking for those egg clusters, looking for those small instars of those nymphs, and taking care of them at that particular stage of the game, and then spraying some of the material at the base of your plants. So, Ellen, looks like
Can I ask a question
real quick.
before we? Okay. We've talked about these and the other ones. Is it okay if we have to pull these plants out or take some of these leaves off to put them in our compost?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Thank you for listening.
Uh-huh.